think of a normal pen. Normal for me means ones that existed when I was a kid. Anyway, this one looks like it should do the trick. Hey, that was Brother Trucker, folks. And as you well know, Brother Trucker has provided the theme song for this program since inception, since we started in September of 2009. That tune is Downtown, and Brother Trucker, one of my favorite local bands. Got to hear them at the Jasper Winery last week, a week before? Recently, at any rate. And gosh, great crowd, great music, as always. I want to thank the Iowa chapter of the Sierra Club and also Iowa Physicians for Social Responsibility. Also, the Great March for Climate Action organizations, 3 organizations that help make this program possible and work on issues that are very, very central to the priorities that we try to promote here on this program. Priorities you probably won't find on commercial broadcast radio, such as climate change. Last I checked, most of the folks on broadcast radio on the big FM and AM stations are in the climate denier camp. The climate denier camp. And again, the climate denier camp is really small. If you just measure in terms of scientific representation, well, about maybe 2 or 3% of all the scientists are in that camp. And there's a real good guess that most of them are somehow receiving at least some money from David and Charles Koch. Speaking of David and Charles Koch, well, they always seem to come up, don't they? These are the billionaires who made a lot of money with oil, make a lot of money by being really unpleasant people. And you don't have to look any further than just a little bit west of Des Moines to see an example of that. If you are getting your water through the Xenia Water Service, the rural water system that's kind of west and a little bit northwest of Des Moines. A lot of problems that group had a few years, maybe 2 years ago now. And it resulted in the need for a major rate hike. Now, two of the customers were ethanol plants. And one of them, I believe it was Poet, agreed, yeah, we'll pay more. The one owned by Charles and David Koch, I think it's near Menlo, maybe Stewart, said, no, we're not going to. And in doing so, because they're such a huge customer, they ended up shifting all that additional, increase to the residential ratepayers and some of the small business customers as well. I mean, just unbridled greed and selfishness. You know, everybody was asked to do their part. Again, we don't need to get into why this thing happened. It was a bad management, you might say, or overexpansion. Maybe partly an attempt to be too much like West Des Moines. But anyway, it happened, and everybody needed to step up. But no, instead of doing their part, Charles and David Koch's business put it all on the little guy and gal in the Xenia Water District. So, we know about that. You also probably know that they've been big supporters of ALEC. That's the American Legislative Exchange Council. ALEC, coming under some increased scrutiny in today's paper, compliments of a young couple that I don't know, Sarah and Michael Blackburn. Now I think they're fairly recent arrivals, if I understood this correctly, but they've been watching Bill Moyers, and Bill Moyers is it's a good thing to watch because it gives you plenty of good information. But it's a bad thing to watch if you feel like you can go through life then not being inspired to take action, which is what they did. They were inspired by the coverage that Moyers has provided to the American Legislative Exchange Council, and so they decided to get involved. So a little background here, of course. Our own governor, Terry Branstad, he is a founding member of ALEC, and ALEC's been around a while, but this is a reminder, so has Terry Branstad. Been around a long time, in fact. So, of course, one of Terry Branstad's campaign promises last time around was that he would make sure government operated with greater transparency. So how's that working out? Well, we've seen plenty of examples of where it's not working out real well, whether it's Speedgate, the speeding ticket situation, whether it's the Iowa Juvenile Home, which we will talk about this program, whether it's water quality and trying to do an end run around the EPA by going to your ag buddies. Yeah. Anyway, it seems like transparency has come really, really hard to Governor Branstad. I mean, Branstad making campaign promises he can't keep. This is not news. This is old stuff. Some of you might remember back in this back in the 1990s. It feels like the 1900s. Or the 19th century, I want to say. Back in the 1990s, Branstad promised, one of his key campaign promises one year was population growth in every county. And I just wanted to see how he was going to pull that out. What he and his staff were going to do to assure that we saw population growth in every county. I mean, you can have a lot of fun with that, or you can realize that it is about as empty a campaign promise as one can make. And of course, he didn't even come close to achieving population growth in every county. We saw the same unfortunate trend of rural communities continuing to decline, while some urban centers did see some growth. And, but unfortunately, you make these crazy promises. They sound good in a sound bite. They sound good in a campaign commercial. They sound good on the stump when you're out walking around the state talking to people, shaking hands, kissing babies, cutting ribbons. But when it comes down to actually doing something, you just can't do that. You can't assure that there will be population growth in every county, especially with the policies that Branstad has supported. And a lot of those include some of the devastating policies that have eviscerated small family farms in rural Iowa. Anyway, so making campaign promises he can't keep, nothing new to the governor. And this one, transparency. Well, I mean, that one he actually could keep if he wanted to. That's a campaign promise you can truly deliver on, unlike population growth in every county, or unlike one of his other standard campaign promises, I will create blank number of jobs. Most recently, it was 200,000 jobs. And we've seen how that's not working out very well either. Excuse me. But on the transparency front, and relevant to ALEC, the American Legislative Exchange Council, Lee Rood, who wrote about the Blackburns and their concern about ALEC and its role in crafting public policy, she had requested that the governor respond to questions about who paid for this trip. This is a trip that that he took to an ALEC meeting in Chicago, and still no response. Again, this is the media calling. And when that happens, you expect a pretty prompt response. Normally you get that. But apparently no response, no transparency. And also, Lee Rood also asked why the speech was not included on his official schedule, or why was there no copy of his speech? Okay, so why? I mean, again, if you have a good reason, at least tell us. But again, he hadn't done that. Transparency. So, and more to the point of transparency about ALEC itself. I mean, this is a group that did fly under the radar for a long time. When I was in the State House, we knew that there was ALEC, and they seemed to be a very conservative group. And then there was NCSL, the National Council of State Legislators. There was also what's it called? Blanking on the acronym now. There's a third one. At any rate, these groups. The NCSL was universally regarded as pretty bipartisan. ALEC was seen as partisan, but it has become more partisan, more clearly a lobbying arm of corporate America with, and again, a very specific agenda within corporate America. And David and Charles Koch are big funders of ALEC. ALEC has come under so much heat, though, because transparency, unwanted by ALEC, unwanted by Branstad, unwanted by others, transparency has been able to expose ALEC for what it really is. It is a lobbying effort, a very effective, powerful lobbying group disguised as a 501c3, disguised as a tax-exempt organization, which it is not. What ALEC does is this conference in Chicago, again, which is happening, behind closed doors, no transparency. This conference, basically, members, and this is mostly almost all Republican lawmakers, draft and vote on model bills. Again, there's no public input into this. There's no press there. Nothing's transparent about it. And yet what comes out of that is a set of recommendations, legislative recommendations, which become almost directly translated into policies. The lawmakers go home to their respective states. They deliver these bills to their legal staff, the staff that draft the language, and they are pretty much produced intact or with some minor changes to accommodate for how that state's code is written. So and again, there's the stand your ground legislation. That's now what passed in about 20 different states. Stand your ground. Clearly a very, very partisan piece of legislation. That's that's an ALEC product. So is the immigration reform bill that was enacted in Arizona a couple years ago. That was an ALEC proposal. These bills. What else do they do? Well, some of them focus on curbing voting rights. Again, what we call voter suppression. Voter suppression, that's on ALEC's agenda. Because again, if you want to be able to control what happens politically, you limit the number of people who vote. Because when you do that, you tend to restrict working class people who tend to vote Democratic. And again, the Democratic Party, lots of problems, but it tends to be a little friendlier to the rank and file person. So you've got these voter suppression bills that ALEC is sponsoring. You've got bills that would take away the public employees unions' rights to organize. You have bills that limit rules that protect air quality, water quality. You have bills to privatize schools, to privatize prisons, privatizing Social Security, privatizing Medicaid. I mean, these are things that the ultra-right, the corporate right, I should say. I mean, not to be mistaken for those who want a theocracy. That's a different conversation. This is those who want a corporatocracy. And they will stop at nothing to get it, including creating a lobbying power. Again, probably the most powerful lobbying group in America. Again, disguising it as a 501c3 tax-exempt organization so they can get money into that entity, a lot bigger donations. Well, it is starting to backfire. I mean, there are significant players that have now backed out of it. Companies like Coke, who knew? Coca-Cola, no longer a part of ALEC, and McDonald's. I mean, these aren't companies that I tend to have a warm and fuzzy feeling about, but they're feeling such heat and feeling so. I mean, it's so clear that ALEC is partisan, and they're operating in a way that is unsavory. They don't want to be tarnished with that. McDonald's has backed out, Coke, and believe it or not, Walmart. All three of those organizations who were corporate sponsors of ALEC, who were members of ALEC, have backed out. Wow. All right. So that's significant. Again, with people like Sarah and Michael Blackburn helping to call attention to this, with reporters, or in this case, editorial writers or opinion writers like Lee Rood, giving it some ink. This is good. This keeps the pressure on. It makes up for the lack of transparency that we see coming from the governor's office on this. Again, Governor Branstad, tell us, who paid for your trip? Why is it not part of your schedule? Is this a campaign event? I mean, again, ALEC presents itself as a legislative group. So presumably if they're focused on legislation, it's not a campaign thing. It's a policy thing, which you do as governor, in which case, tax money is paying for you to go there. Presumably, I mean, again, tax money is we are paying for a lot of what's going on at ALEC. Again, ALEC has its corporate sponsors, but who pays for the legislators who participate? We do. And again, when I was in, it was a pretty steep price tag. In the case of the legislative, the National Council of State Legislators, there we go, NCSL, that membership is paid as a block. All lawmakers are part of it. And nobody has trouble with that because they're not partisan. They don't have a specific agenda. This group, very specific agenda. And we are paying for, I mean, I don't think there's a single Democrat at the Iowa State House that is a member of ALEC. Yet we, the taxpayers, are paying for the Republican members who choose to be part of this. So Governor Branstad, tell us, what was in your speech to ALEC? We can't know because we aren't allowed into these discussions, even though legislative proposals come out of these discussions. Normally when a legislative proposal is made, there's a subcommittee meeting, there's a committee meeting, there's debate on the floor of the House or the Senate, there's a conference committee. Those are all, for the most part, public meetings, as they should be. This is not public, and yet taxpayers' money are involved. You're involved, and you are refusing to tell us. You're again being totally inconsistent with your commitment to transparency. And I think that's a problem, and I'm going to call foul. and we're going to go to a break. I do want to thank the folks at Gateway Market for supporting this program. This segment in particular, Gateway Market has been a great ally in this effort. And again, you should check them out, folks, for groceries, because a lot of what they get comes from local farms, local producers. And they also, and we will take calls, by the way, too, 244-0077. Gateway Market also serves breakfast, lunch, and supper. And we'll be having a supper there, actually, or brunch there Sunday after a walk in preparation for the Climate March. Again, I also want to thank Tally's Restaurant, Bar, and Catering in Beaverdale, where I hope to have dinner tonight. Tally's is a fantastic place with a great menu and outdoor seating on the roof and on the sidewalk. I also want to thank Dan Kelly and his real estate business in Newton. Newton is a great place, folks. Amazing what they've done to survive the Maytag disaster. When Maytag pulled out, everybody thought Newton is done for. Well, they're not done for. They got a lot of good people there, including Dan Kelly. And again, if you want to talk with him about buying or selling property in Newton, give him a shout, because he's not just a lawmaker. He's got his private work as well, as many lawmakers do. All right, folks, I'll be back in just a couple minutes. We're going to talk about the Toledo juvenile home when we return. A very, very troubling situation with some new developments that warrant some conversation.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Drug and alcohol addiction slowly steals a person's identity, tearing away pieces of their life little by little until one day it seems like the hope of a happy future is gone and there's no chance of getting it back. Here at St. Gregory Retreat Centers, we can assure you that there is hope. Our unique approach to recovery begins with the understanding that the dysfunction and damage caused by addiction can be overcome, not just dealt with. Don't let another day go by. Call St. Gregory today.
Well, good morning. This is the 7th of June in the Lord's year 2010, and this is day one of webcast1live.com. We will begin with Max World Live with my special guest, Tom Coates. In just a minute, there's Tom. Wait. Howdy. And we will be live for the very first time on Webcast One Live. Someday we're going to look back on this and say, gosh, remember that old day in history? Wonder where Walter Cronkite was. He must have been around hanging there too. But actually, it's the beginning of Webcast One Live. And thank you for listening. Thanks, Rob Spearman, and everybody who's put together this project together. And we're ready to go live now. So thanks for listening to MaxWorldLive.com.
I can't tell you that it's going real well from time to time, but it is going, man.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Welcome back, folks. That's Mr. Baber's Neighbors and Ode to Jones. I want to thank the Immigrant Entrepreneur Summit for sponsoring this segment of our program. The IES is coming up on November 9th, and if you've got a business idea, if you'd like to go into business for yourself, you've got a creative venture you'd like to get some help with, that's the place to do it. For $35, it's heavily subsidized. I mean, trust me, they've got a great event with a fantastic lunch too, by the way, but also some really quality speakers and presentations. I think last year, out of the nearly 500 people who showed up, about 100 new business startups occurred. Pretty amazing. Give it a look, folks. It's going to be November 9th at Drake University. IESUSA.org for more information. Okay, go into our phone lines here, 244-0077, 244-0077. We are going to roll into the Toledo juvenile home situation shortly, but I believe Ron Yarnell is with us and has some thoughts on Alec. Hello, Ron.
Yeah, how you doing, Ed?
Good.
I was thinking while you were talking about Alec that, everything that, first of all, obviously the problem with Alec is everything it does is legal, okay, as far as we know. And
well, I'm not sure.
Well, as far as we know, okay, being a partisan lobby group for corporate America is not against the law.
Right, but posing as a 501c3 to do it?
Well, okay, then who investigates that?
Well, not Terry Branstad. He's only paying lip service to transparency.
All right. Then that's the thing. I mean, that needs to be investigated. But if the political authorities are turning a blind eye, life is what it is. Mm-hmm. What I really wanted to mention, though, it seemed to me as I was listening to you describe Alec, I think it was a fair description. It seems to me that Alec is everything for the right wing that the right wing used to accuse Acorn of being for the left wing. This nefarious group. To this day, Republicans vote to defund Acorn, even though Acorn has dissolved as an organization.
Yeah, and again, the accusations against Acorn were I wouldn't say they were fabricated. They're based on a grain of truth, but it was a pretty impressive exaggeration.
Well, it was not. Now, I think when dealing with groups like ALEC, the basic question that should be posed to the electorate is, do you want full, robust, take the gloves off corporate rule? Is that the society that you want to live in? Do you want big business to decide everything important for you? And I think, despite all the bombast, two things. Most people will say, no, we really don't want that. And on the other hand, we're going to have to confront the truth. It's the nature of big business. It's the nature of capitalism that they do want it all. I mean, they do want that level of power over society. And we need to really take that in as an electorate that, people who make big money, they want to make bigger money. They want more power. They want everything.
Well, and not everyone. I mean, there are plenty of decent philanthropists among the wealthy out there, but there are some I mean, David and Charles Koch are a great example of people who seem uninclined to stop at anything. I'm not a big Bill Gates fan, although Bill Gates is probably the poster boy for philanthropy. Well, or Warren Buffett.
Yeah.
Are you a Warren Buffett fan?
I'm more of a Buffett fan than I am a Gates fan. Gates only does philanthropy if it's good for him, from what I've been able to observe. Buffett seems to have a wider view of things. Mm-hmm. But my point is that there are these powers. There is this entity in our society that wants to run everything. Sometimes they believe themselves it's for the greater good. Okay, so they believe that if they had all the power, life would be swimming.
Yeah.
There needs to be an intelligible response that needs to be posed to the electorate. Yeah. Do you want big business? Do you want Monsanto? Do you want Microsoft? Do you want anyone that's on that level? Do you want them to run your life for you? Because that's your choice. You're never just by yourself, a free individual making decisions. There's always power being exerted.
I mean, we continue to see some progress in this country in some very positive ways, and yet at the same time, we see an increased concentration of wealth in the hands of fewer and fewer people. We see the middle class shrinking. We see those in the bottom third or even bottom 2/3 of our country struggling harder and harder to get by. And then you see changes, court rulings like Citizens United, which again make it easier for the very powerful and very wealthy to spend lots of money getting their, quote, message, let's call it what it is, propaganda out there. And it's very powerful. It's very effective.
They just don't want to propagandize. They want the male-fisted power, okay? They want to run the show. And I'm dubious about this progress that you cite because ALEC is the logical result, continuing the result of a decision made in the early 70s that the New Deal mentality, the Great Society mentality, the mentality that says average people deserve a break has gone too far. This whole thing began in the early 70s when the people who really run our society say we have to draw a line in the sand, or we're going to have poor people, we're going to have women, we're going to have minorities, we're going to have all these kinds of people in the decision-making process, and we don't want that. All right?
Well,
and that's a history that's pretty well documented. The conservative movement basically became a shill for the corporate rule 40 years ago.
Okay, but all right. Despite that, good things continue to happen. We have a level of equality for gay and lesbian Americans that we never saw before.
Okay, we're there with Dick Cheney. Good.
We also see more and more people understanding the importance of taking responsibility for their health and well-being, not buying the corporate propaganda on food. We see a tremendous growth in organics and local food systems.
And how does that work out? We already talked about the effect of Whole Foods, the Whole Foods company on Des Moines.
Right, but even as that happens, we still see a growth in local producers and farmers markets. We see strong companies like Gateway Market, Campbell's, New City Market. I mean, Campbell's and New City have been around a long time, and they're still continuing to thrive despite that kind of pressure, despite that kind of centralization and consolidation.
Despite the fact that the powers that be are actually handing out our tax dollars to large corporations with dubious labor records to come in.
Sure. Yeah. Well, they want to. The powers like Chris Hensley in this case, when you're talking about Whole Foods, and the City of Des Moines Economic Development Department. I'm not quite sure what West Des Moines did on that front.
What I'm saying is all these niceties that you cite as progress, corporate America in many ways is okay with them. All right. They don't really care. What they want is the fundamental leverage of power in this society, the fundamental economic overlordship.
Right.
And that has been going on for 40 years. And as far as I can see, there's been no real. The opposition is more of a kind of a grassroots. I haven't really seen the Democratic Party stand up to corporate America.
No, well, the problem is, I mean, when I first got elected back in 2006, I spent $6,000 to beat an incumbent. I had a $100 cap on donations. I remember talking to Mike Fitzgerald when he was considering running for governor back in 2006. Did I say 2006? In 1992, when I first ran, I spent $6,000. About the same time, Mike Fitzgerald spent $6,000 to get elected to a statewide office. I mean, that it has changed horribly. And again, part of the problem is Democrats have learned how to suck at the corporate teat as well, right. And they've gotten good at it. And so when you do that, you're much less inclined to criticize the corporate agenda when your bread is buttered by the same knife.
Sometimes pop culture gives you the cue because the youth today, they're the ones who are really apprehensive about corporate rule. In November, the sequel to The Hunger Games is coming out, and The Hunger Games is all about a corporate dystopia. And the kids are tuned into that far more than their elders suspected. The kids see where society is going. They don't particularly like it. They don't particularly feel they have any power over it. And I think that's kind of a prophetic statement all by itself.
Well, I mean, one test of whether there is good left in the corporate element of our society, and again, your analysis is disturbing, but it has plenty of truth in it. But my thought is climate change is the crisis that is confronting this century. Will corporate America step up to the plate despite other things we might disagree with them about? Will they step up to the plate and embrace changes that are necessary for business to continue as it is? Charles and David Koch will never embrace it. Charles and David Koch, they're climate deniers to the core because they can't afford not to be. But businesses like insurance companies.
And so will ExxonMobil, okay?
Sure.
If you have a significant amount of the corporate power structure, the really important corporations, if they don't understand themselves to be making money out of doing something about climate change, responding to it, then the answer is no.
Yeah, but take Mid-American Energy. I mean, Mid-American and I we have a fight that goes back to the early 90s, all right? But now, I mean, they and for all their reliance on coal for all their passion for nuclear power, they are moving in the right direction on wind. My problem with the wind issue, and we may talk about that this week as well, is that consolidation. Wind is great. It's too bad so much of it is being controlled by one entity. But in terms of its impact on climate change, on addressing the climate crisis, undeniably, wind energy is a great, probably the best thing we can do energy-wise to move away from our reliance on fossil fuel. Mid-American is doing good work on that and making money at it. So,
okay, the last part
maybe
is the
Exxon
key.
and Mobil will make that same shift.
The last part you said with Mid-American Energy is the key. They're making money at it. All right. The thing about corporations, like all institutions, they change direction at like the Titanic. Okay, they don't do well with change.
Right. They change a little bit quicker than the Titanic and a little bit quicker than the government.
I mean, they're not nearly as nimble as free market enthusiasts like to pretend they are. They're stodgy. They see where money's coming in
because they're big. Big moves slow.
Right, and they see any change to be threatened, and they have to face their shareholders and explain to them what might be the risk to their dividend. And you know what? Shareholders don't like to hear that. Yeah. They really don't. And the people who are the board of directors and the CEO who get a nice cut of the action, they're not going to do much to endanger their piece of the action either. Now, I want to be clear here. I mean, I invest in the stock market, okay? I'm not just a knee-jerk corporate basher, but I do understand...
You're a discerning corporate basher.
The corporations, big business, capitalism, it wants all the power. It wants all the money. It is like an alcoholic.
But it also knows that it can't have all the money and all the power, because then there won't be anybody out there left to buy all the cheap products they make and sell at Walmart.
It doesn't like to hear that. Okay, there are very few Henry Fords left. Well, Henry Ford was a person of tremendous personal faults, but Henry Ford's one breakthrough was that if his workers could afford the product he was making, that would be his benefit.
Well, that's the bottom line. The direction you described, that again some in corporate America want to go, it's not sustainable. If it's not sustainable, it ain't going to last. I mean, we might head that way. We might incur a lot of problems, pain, destruction, economic turmoil, but it's not going to last because it doesn't work. It can't continue.
Okay, then our job is not to wind up like Dust Bowl, Oklahoma, which by the time they found out the land drive wasn't sustainable, the place was devastated and really hasn't recovered since. Okay, that's the...
So you're saying Oklahoma is not okay?
What do you think? What kind of politics come out of Oklahoma?
I don't know. I don't follow Oklahoma close enough to know. All I know is we do not yet have a climate marsher from Oklahoma, but we do have one from 11 states. Just to cite Oklahoma, even though their historic experience with environmental devastation, Inhofe is their senator or congressperson, wonderful nest of climate deniers. Yeah. No, environmental stuff doesn't change a thing. Don't listen to those nutty environmentalists. Well, Ron, I've got to run to a break. It's been great talking with another nutty environmentalist. Thanks for joining us.
All right.
Enjoy. I believe you're on vacation, are you not?
Well, I have a continuing education thing I need to attend to.
Okay, we'll call that vacation then.
All right.
I'll see you next week. Thanks.
Bye.
Folks, I want to thank the Immigrant Entrepreneur Summit for helping to sponsor this segment of our show. And also Hawk Restaurant at East 5th and Walnut in the East Village neighborhood, where 90% of the food that Suman and Cynthia Hawk purchase comes from local farms and local producers. Also the Fighting Burrito. I love Fighting Burrito, folks, because you get to make it yourself. I like making my own thing. You can design your own burrito at Fighting Burrito, and at a very affordable price. So check them out. Join the fight. That's Fighting Burrito at 13th and Locust, also on Welch Ave in Ames. When we come back, as promised, we're going to talk about the Toledo Juvenile Home. Again, some more developments in that are also very, very disturbing.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
I'm Brian Leach, owner and general manager of Service Legends. I brought along a couple of the home comfort heroes.
Hi, I'm Tammy Wells.
I am Nick Wondershide.
I'm Administrative Manager
I am the Senior Technician.
from Service Legends.
It seems like every good thing, when you feel it to the bone that it's good, there's a lot of hard work put behind it. I don't think that you can fake it and have it turn out good.
You know, if we seem like, okay, that's just weird, it's just a furnace, why would you believe so deeply in a furnace? It's not just that, you know, we want to show the world that you can have good service.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be, it's your home.
You know, it's built into our daily trainings, it's built into our culture, that we're going to do whatever it takes to have each client say they love us, period.
That's why we spend all the hours in the training that we do. And if we guarantee it's going to be a good experience for you, or else it's free, what type of work do you think we're going to do?
There is a guarantee.
Temperature selection guarantee, fixed rider it's free guarantee, comfort guarantee, best value guarantee. All of these guarantees hold us accountable to ensuring that we exceed your expectations. And if for whatever reason we'd fail and we can't make it right, we guarantee all of those guarantees with a 100% money back guarantee.
I mean, if you don't think that your technician can fix it right, are you going to say that to a client? No.
You don't have to worry about having a technician come to your house.
We drug test, background check all of our team members. We put safe people in your home. Each and every one of our service techs, 400 hours a year in training.
You tell it the minute they walk in the door. They know what they're doing, they've done their homework, and they actually truly care about what you want.
Because at the end of the day, you're the person that makes sure I have a job.
They're going to be listening. They're going to want to know what your challenges are. Then they're going to come and give you options, and you get to choose.
If I'm there to help and I make it easy and painless, I did my job right that day.
Well, when it comes to your comfort, safety, and your family, you know, you don't necessarily go buy the most expensive, but you get the most bang for your buck.
Oh, it's worth it, because there's a lot of people that will find a way to get it to work right now and then leave and then come back, charge you again, and the cycle just repeats itself. So when I'm out there looking at the furnace, I want to find why it failed today. How can we change the part today with something that you're not going to have to worry about? Is it worth changing the part today? I mean, you can put a lot of money into a furnace. I can fix parts all day. There's good job security in that for me, but is it the right thing for you?
I get a lot of the phone calls of after the technicians are there. They're just in awe. They're like, wow, you guys are great. I mean, I don't even know what to say. You guys are great. Everything you did was perfect. It was great.
Keep going though, I like this.
Just give us a try. I'm going to take all the risk.
I've got the time to make this right. I've got the support to make it right.
Just check us out.
And if you don't see the value in what we do,
I mean, fixed rider, it's free or 100% money back.
enough said.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
That's Max Wellman, folks. And remember, Max is performing with one of his mentors, Gary Walters, at Drake University, a new jazz wing studio, whatever, attached to the Fine Arts Building there, 25th and Carpenter. That's going to be tomorrow night at, I believe, 7:30. Anyway, information about that at Max Wellman Music online. I want to thank again, Gateway Market for helping to sponsor this segment of our show. And remind you to support the businesses that help make this program possible. Information about all of them on my website, fallonforum.com. If you'd like to call in and join the conversation here, 244-0077, 244-0077. We're going to talk a bit about the Toledo, Iowa juvenile home situation. It's so disturbing. You know, and I was in the legislature when... I mean, we know that isolation cells were used at Toledo back in 1996, and presumably continuously since then. I was in the legislature for 10 of those years, and there's so much to know about. Did not know about it. It took a fantastic organization, Disability Rights Iowa, to expose what was going on. I did, however, discover the use of isolation cells at Mitchellville, and the nice thing about being a lawmaker, one nice thing, is that you can get into any prison at any time and demand to see things. I did the same. I used the same connection to get into Iowa's nursing homes and see what was going on there. But at Mitchellville, I really it was disturbing. I mean, I left being incredibly bothered by what I saw. Tiny cells with no windows. All the light was artificial. obviously no air, a tiny little bed. Any bodily functions that needed to be addressed, you did there right in the cell, in light of anybody walking by. It was appalling. And I, people that I considered who kind of became friends because I would visit. I visited prisons all the time, and especially Mitchellville because it was in Polk County. It was the closest one nearby. But I got to know some of the women there, and stories about how, why they got locked up in isolation units. I mean, for teeny tiny minor offenses that you wouldn't even consider them offenses, like just little things dealing with the wrong choice on laundry, on ridiculous things, and that they'd be put in isolation units, sometimes for a week or more at a time. I mean, I would go nuts within a day. I mean, people might say I'm already nuts. There's opinions about that, but I would be unmistakably, noticeably crazy after just a day in one of those units. And it was just troubling to see people in there for a long time. The most troubling situation was a woman, and I'm blanking on her name now, but she was mentally ill. There was no reason for her to be in prison. I mean, yes, she was a problem. She'd committed a crime. But, I mean, she was very, very, very disturbed. She did not belong in prison. She was put in an isolation cell for, I can't remember how long. It was months. And at some point, she gouged out one of her eyes. Just a horrible situation. So, of course, what happened? How did the prison respond? Well, they kept her in isolation. She gouged out a second eye. She's blind now because of that. You see these things, and you are so, if you have any compassion or any sense at all, you're just deeply offended. And I cannot understand why so many people at the Iowa Juvenile Home who saw this going on were not offended. And and that was one of the facilities I never visited, and I never visited Toledo, and I regret not doing that. I would have seen this, and I wonder how I would have reacted, probably similar to how I reacted at Mitchellville. But there are new... Clark Kaufman with the Des Moines Register doing a great job at exposing what's going on. And he talks about how new incidents involving physical restraints and injured youth, despite that additional information coming to light, state officials are resisting recommendations for additional training and guidance at the Toledo home. Okay, so state officials, that would include the governor's office, presumably. Now I made a couple phone calls this morning. I wanted to talk with somebody at the Attorney General's office. Again, the Attorney General is not responsible for implementing human service programs. Obviously, they're not responsible for what goes on at Toledo. But what is important, why the Attorney General should be a part of this conversation, is because there are questions about whether whether the use of isolation cells and whether the use of physical restraints is consistent with the Code of Iowa, whether it is within the jurisdiction of our law. So Iowa Attorney General Tom Miller, and this is in the story that Clark Kaufman writes, is keeping secret detailed information about these things. Last month, this is not just breaking news, but last month Miller's office was asked to and refused to disclose a portion of an email that included a written description of the home's, quote, control rooms. That's what they call these isolation cells, control rooms, where, again, young people, mostly young girls, it seems, can be kept for up to a year. Control room, like a timeout room, Okay, so Eric Tabor, again, and I like Miller. I like Eric Tabor. I like Jeff Greenwood. I like the folks who work there, but that's not going to stop me from being critical if I think something smells wrong. So Eric Tabor, who is the chief of staff for Miller, he said that state law prohibits the disclosure of treatment information even in cases where patients are unidentified. He said the use of seclusion at the juvenile home represents a type of treatment. Oh God, that is such a stretch. I'm having such a hard time with that. Sticking somebody in a, quote, control room, in a cell, in an isolation unit, that's a type of treatment? If that's a type of treatment, I mean, that is avoiding treatment. That is finding a way out of any kind of treatment that is going to have any effect. I mean, come on, that can't be good. And to call that treatment, and so that's their way around avoiding having to, getting around having to present any information that's being requested. Okay. So on Monday, this is this week, 2 days ago, the Attorney General's office again refused to disclose information about a July 18th incident at the home where a youth was forcibly and physically restrained by 6 staffers. Tabor again called that treatment. I mean, it's not just Branstad's office, folks. Okay, so I called this morning, and I got a hold of Jeff Greenwood. Again, Jeff Greenwood, somebody I like. I worked with him when he was back in news. I was disturbed by the conversation because he kept coming back to saying, well, the Attorney General's office is not responsible for human services. And I said, I know that. I was a legislator for 14 years. I know where the AG's jurisdiction lies. The reason I'm calling is because the AG's jurisdiction lies in understanding the appropriate interpretation of Iowa law. Is it appropriate that this information regarding activities at the home be kept secret from the public? Do we not have a right to know? Okay, so again, I could not get a response. He said he would get back to me about whether or not somebody from the Attorney General's office would agree to come and talk about it on the show. And I hope they do, and I'll give them a fair hearing. I always do. I always let people have a fair chance to talk. And I always have my opinions, and there are times when I change my mind because people bring good information to my attention. So we'll see what happens with that. But again, it's not just I also called the Department of Human Services, and I spoke with I spoke with Director Palmer's assistant, who took down the details and said somebody would get back with me. Again, I'm not going to hold my breath on that. I was happy to be able to get to speak with her, but will I actually hear from Chuck Palmer? Will I actually hear from anybody in the Department of Human Services? I am not holding my breath. Now, again, Governor Branstad has said, he said this recently, that, quote, the Department of Human Services, quote, changed the leadership at the Toledo facility, and they've also changed the practices and standards of care at that facility. He said that. But as Disability Rights Iowa has found out, and as one of their attorneys reported, it does not appear to be the case at all. This is a quote from Nathan Kirstein. He says, quote, they still do not have a new dynamic leadership team there that is fully bought into the idea of trauma-informed care. Now, we need to talk more about what that is, but we're running out of time here. So again, there's this more and more about this. And again, I come back to the question of transparency, Governor. We have a right to know more about what's going on. We have a right to have conversations about these things. It seems like, Clark Kaufman is a pit bull. He's done a great job at rooting out this information. It has not been easy. You look at the email about the juvenile home included in today's paper. Half of the words are blacked out. A lot of very critical information just is not there, and that's not right. We have a right to know, and we have a right to understand why these techniques are used, whether they are consistent with Iowa law. And if indeed there has been a change in leadership, a change of approach, we need to see evidence to make it clear that that is indeed what is happening. I think a lot of us are skeptical. And the less inclined government officials, whether they be in the Department of Human Services or the governor's office or the Democratic Attorney General's office, wherever they are in state government, if they are uninclined to dialogue with the public about this, if they are uninclined to present full information, if what we're going to get is emails where half the words are blacked out, you're not going to have the public confidence that there's any true interest in transparency. All right, there will be, unfortunately, plenty more to talk about this issue, but we're going to switch gears here. We're going to run to a quick break. Again, I want to thank Gateway Marketing Cafe for sponsoring this segment of our show and remind you to support the businesses that make this show possible. Businesses like Sargent's Garage. Sargent's is at 6th and College, just north of downtown Des Moines, and always a very timely attention to vehicles. Everybody who I've sent there has told me they've been very, very happy with the work they've had done on their cars. Also, Ritual Cafe, folks, at 13th and Locust, one of my favorite places for coffee. I don't drink coffee. Tea, I meant to say tea, smoothies, paninis, and music as well. And I've given concerts at Ritual Cafe myself. I'm inclined to do that again, especially after giving one of the worst performances of my life last night at a rally. But that's another story. I'll be back in a couple minutes. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the political shakings up that are going on as we move toward the 2016 presidential election. We'll also talk a little bit about some of the positive stuff happening on the wind energy front. And there are folks who work for fast food restaurants who are clamoring for an increase in their wage.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Drug and alcohol addiction slowly steals a person's identity, tearing away pieces of their life little by little until one day it seems like the hope of a happy future is gone and there's no chance of getting it back. Here at St. Gregory Retreat Centers, we can assure you that there is hope. Our unique approach to recovery begins with the understanding that the dysfunction and damage caused by addiction can be overcome, not just dealt with. Don't let another day go by. Call St. Gregory today.
Well, good morning. This is the 7th of June in the Lord's year 2010, and this is day 1 of webcast1live.com. We will begin with Max World Live with my special guest, Tom Coates. In just a minute, there's Tom. Wait. Howdy. And we will be live for the very first time on Webcast One Live. Someday we're going to look back on this and say, gosh, remember that old day in history? Wonder where Walter Cronkite was. He must have been around hanging there too. But actually, it's the beginning of Webcast One Live. And thank you for listening. Thanks, Rob Spearman, and everybody who's put together this project together. And we're ready to go live now. So thanks for listening to MaxWorldLive.com.
I can't tell you that it's going real well from time to time, but it is going.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Those 2-minute breaks go by way too fast. Anyway, thanks, Mary McAdams, for kicking off this final segment of our show. And thanks to the Immigrant Entrepreneur Summit for sponsoring it. Okay, so there are politicians about, folks. Beware. Be wary. Be careful. Be looking over your shoulder and hang on to your pocketbook. There's lots of noise being made, and some of it interesting, some of it predictable, some of it just silly. Again, the 2016, I know we're not even to 2014 yet when we expect a interesting Senate race, a couple interesting congressional races, and a race for governor here in Iowa. But there was already talk about the 2016 presidential election. And this is both an opportunity for Iowa, but also a real drag. We have to pay attention to this stuff, I guess. We don't talk about it too much on this program, but we should at least take a look at some of the folks who are courting Iowa. On the GOP side, of course, there's always Rick Santorum. He's back, and it'll be interesting to see what happens with the Iowa straw poll. That was the That's the pay-to-play GOP event that basically is a huge fundraiser, gets way too much media attention. I mean, the media like to criticize it, but that doesn't stop them from coming and covering it and lauding all sorts of praise on the winner, who, again, this past year was who? This past time around, Michelle Bachmann. And remind me how well she did in the presidential election? Oh, actually, she got last in Iowa. So she won the straw poll, got last in Iowa, dropped out, is it even before New Hampshire? And now is not even running again for Congress. So I'm kind of liking the straw poll. I think we should keep that. If the straw poll can produce more Michelle Bachmann's, that's wonderful. So maybe the next person to win the straw poll will also not only go nowhere running for president, but will drop out of whatever other political position they hold. Yeah, Rick Santorum. Maybe he can win the straw poll next time around and be a done deal after that. Also making noise, there is a pair of cruises. No, not Tom Cruise. That's my favorite cruise, Tom Cruise. Yes, I love his Irish accent in Far and Away. Yeah. Okay. So Rafael Cruz, he's a U.S. senator. No, he's okay, let me back up. Ted Cruz, okay. Ted Cruz is the 42-year-old Republican U.S. senator from Texas. He's speaking this coming Saturday at the Family Leaders event. He's been described as having a fiery Bible-quoting first speech to evangelical conservative pastors in Des Moines last month. He called on them to demand that their GOP elected officials actually stand for the conservative principles they say they believe in. And by conservative, we mean the kind of conservative that wants more government involved in your life. If you're a woman, if you're a gay person and want to marry, they want to prevent that. That's the kind of thing they're looking for. Rafael Cruz is 74. He was born in Cuba. This is Ted Cruz's dad. Came to the U.S. With $100 on him. And he apparently will also be speaking. He's stumping for his son. This is kind of a Ron Paul kind of thing. There's also Steve Baldwin. I don't know this guy. I don't watch enough TV. But Steve Baldwin is also apparently interested in being a part of the Family Leader event. And of course, what would a Family Leader event be without an invitation to Donald Trump, who of course very well might stand them up again as he has done in the past. I really do not understand why people have any interest in Donald Trump at all. Jan Michelson asked recently. He asked Bob Vanderplatz about Donald Trump. He says he doesn't have to sell his casinos in order to come here, does he? And Vanderplatz says that would be a good idea if he did. It is interesting that the Family Leader has any interest in Donald Trump at all, given how inconsistent with so many of their stated principles he is. I was very surprised and pleased to see listed in the slate of people that are being talked about, Fred Karger. I like Fred. Fred's a Republican. He's openly gay. That in itself was unusual, an openly gay Republican. He ran for president last time around. Didn't get a lot of traction. But actually, his Republican credentials go back a lot further than a lot of these other people. He's been very active in Republican politics for a long, long time. Anyway, so we'll see if he gets any more traction this year. With the Republican Party, with a big chunk of it trying to become more mainstream, trying to become more acceptable to a broader constituency group, whether they be immigrants, gays and lesbians, environmentalists. With Republicans some of them knowing they've got to be more centrist if they're going to have any chance at all. Fred Karger might be somebody that might interest them. We'll see. I think it's fascinating that he's actually being mentioned in the mainstream press. That is new. That didn't happen last time. We'll see where that goes. And we are going to try to get Fred. We'll try to get all these people on the show, but I think some of them probably are in the realm of the long shot. Anyway, thanks for joining us today, folks. Thanks to Maddie Arrington, my producer. Maddie Kane, sorry. Marriage thing. Got to get the new name down. Thanks to Webcast One Live for providing the studio. Thanks to a new haircut, and hopefully I didn't blind any of you out there. And I want to thank, again, all of our business supporters as well. Diana's Wedding Cakes out of Newton. Story County Veterinary Clinic in Story County, obviously, between Ames and Nevada. And all the other folks that make this show possible. The Sierra Club, the Iowa chapter of the Sierra Club, that is, the Iowa chapter of Physicians for Social Responsibility, and the Great March for Climate Action. I'll be back on Thursday.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.